It is not a matter for the crown.
They are my men, and we depend on those men now to secure your rule.
For those of us who were expecting major battles breaking out in a 5th episode of House of the Dragon Season 3, we can't help but feel a little jilted. Instead of battle, we got more cloak and dagger tactics from Criston Cole and political intrigue from the cast at King's Landing. Most characters remain exactly where they are, but the board on which this game is played has been drastically altered. There is a new one being minted in Westeros, though its life cycle might be short indeed. But you'll have heard all about that and everything else in our Ending Explained video. So let's go beyond and discuss our predictions for the next episode. Spoiler warning as always, and without further ado, let's get right to it.
Have you forgotten already the doom that hangs over you?
Rhaena's big mistake. Could Rhaenyra turn her gaze eastward? When you're at war, you can't fight battles on every front because you'll be stretched too thin. Do that and the enemy will surely find a weak point to break through. So, there are certain issues you must ignore as a matter of priority, not principle. And that's precisely what's keeping Rhaena Targaryen alive, because Daemon's youngest daughter is effectively a war criminal. She and her dragon were responsible for the deaths of dozens of Valyrian sailors, and indirectly the crown prince as well. Rhaena knew this the moment she realized Sheepstealer was acting of his own will. That's why she hid in the Vale in the first place, leveraging Jane Arryn's wounded pride for unofficial asylum. The last time we saw Rhaena, she was living in a cave before her father found her. They had a tense conversation, and Rhaena asked him to protect her from his vengeful wife. She then flew away on Sheepstealer, and the next update we have on her is from the preview of episode 6, where she's hauled in to Aerie, and Jane Arryn reminds her that she's a doomed girl. Now, the way Rhaena's dragged in obviously suggests that she's done something that highly displeases the Lady of the Vale. The question is what? And there are two things that come to our mind. The first is something we saw in the mid-season Weeks Ahead trailer. In that trailer, Rhaena was looking at Sheepstealer as it flew in the distance from a cliff, and you can distinctly spot another dragon in the sky. Now, this could be Daemon on Caraxes trying to track Rhaena through Sheepstealer, and we know Caraxes has a sort of sixth sense for locating him. But something tells us that isn't Caraxes, because there's another large dragon that's closer at hand to the Vale, Vhagar. In episode 5, we learned that Vhagar has truly left Harrenhal, while Aemond convalesces from his injuries. Now, that makes sense considering we've seen Vhagar disobey him before, most notably when she killed Luke and Arax. But also, dragons as old as her do naturally go ranging for food, and Vhagar is certainly old enough to remember instincts that have been dulled for other dragons thanks to pampered living within the dragon pit. So why is Vhagar chasing Sheepstealer? Two reasons. One is combat, because they do have riders with opposing loyalties, but two, they could be performing a mating dance. Sheepstealer is a male, according to Daemon, and Vhagar is pretty well established as a female dragon. It is possible that their mating is noticed by the people of the Vale, who know Sheepstealer makes its home in the Mountains of the Moon. The threat of it mating with Vhagar is grave enough to warrant Jane's attention and her rough treatment of Rhaena, but there is another possibility. Many fans have hated how Rhaena essentially replaced a book favorite character called Nettles, especially because Nettles' story goes beyond the dance and connects to Game of Thrones in a way. Like Rhaena, she too takes refuge in the mountains, but that's after the dance. She also becomes a godlike figure who starts the tribe of the Burned Men, because the wildlings of the Vale start viewing being burned by Sheepstealer and surviving as a rite of passage. Timett, son of Timett from Game of Thrones, is a burned man, and the Hill tribes have long been bitter enemies of the Vale men. If Rhaena is going full Nettles and now baptizing wildlings with fire, she is a threat to the Vale, because these wildlings fight with a furor unknown to nobility, and they're quite rebellious. There's already a hint that some of this is already happening, because the shepherd Daemon killed seemed to have been looking for Rhaena to give her and Sheepstealer, well, sheep. We'll see which way the story flows in episode 6. But these are the top two reasons Rhaena Targaryen could attract Lady Jane's ire, and neither scenario will be good for her. Ormond's next step. Gwaine Hightower arrives at Tumbleton. Speaking of things that aren't good for people, Gwaine Hightower has finally realized that Criston Cole's relationship with the concept of living itself has now soured. I mean, he knew it for a long time, he just didn't want to acknowledge that Cole's plan to make their rapidly depleting army act as a guerrilla force was also suicidal. Now that he has fully acknowledged it, he's splitting because he tried everything he could, from offering the man condolences to asylum. At the end of episode 5, Gwaine leaves Cole's army with his men, and if you've been watching this season closely, then his destination should be quite clear to you guys. Gwaine is headed to Tumbleton, to where the last sane member of his family holds the last hope for their cause. And judging from the preview of episode 6, it looks like he arrives there. There's a shot of Aemond in the preview where he says that everything is in his favor, while two sheepish brown-haired men stand in the room. One of them is Daeron, and the other has that distinct lock of hair on his head that's become Gwaine's signature style. His arrival at Tumbleton would only strengthen Aemond's belief that he now has to throw his entire weight behind Daeron, because Gwaine has seen firsthand just how miserable the Crown's response to Rhaenyra has been. Aegon is presumed dead or fled, and Aemond abandoned them as well, which Gwaine will most certainly believe having been to Harrenhal. Aemond, for his part, has not been silent at all. He's been using his connections within the Hightower men that reside in the capital to sully Rhaenyra's name. The man with heterochromia who was there on the walls when Alicent told Sir Frederick to stand down is Aemond's agent, and he's the one who's been spreading propaganda throughout the city. It's disappointing to learn that he isn't Larys Strong's man, but that might still be true, so we'll not close the book on the possibility just yet. But Aemond's shadow war has now escalated into killing Rhaenyra's personal army, because his men have been murdering gold cloaks all over King's Landing. At the end of episode 5, Aemond struck a massive blow to the Blacks by taking out the entire Gold Cloak High Command that was loyal to Daemon and arranging their bodies in a grisly feast. Both a reference to the Red Wedding and another battle we will be speaking of soon enough, so don't go anywhere. Aemond's plan is clearly working, because bite by bite, he is making Rhaenyra's hold on the throne unravel. Him printing coinage with Daeron's face on it isn't an economic decision, it's a political one, because by paying people with this coin, he makes them think Daeron is the legitimate king. Legitimacy is something Rhaenyra's been obsessed with in season 3, and Aemond's next step is going to take things one step further. Based on the movements of certain members of the Red Keep's household, it's clear that there are spies working both for and against Rhaenyra in the Keep. Now that Prince Joffrey is back with his mom and the official heir to the Iron Throne, Aemond's time is ripe. If he can expose the prince's status to the commons or make a major threatening move against him, it will act as a tipping point that sends Rhaenyra into anger, and that's exactly what Aemond wants, because he's pushing her limits and forcing her to make a mistake. If you've seen any of the trailers, you'll know that eventually he does succeed, because Rhaenyra decides to send both armies and dragons to retake Tumbleton. But Aemond's next precise move will be one of consolidating his power based on Gwaine's information, finishing the construction of Tumbleton's defenses, sowing more dissension and unrest within the capital, and then just waiting for Rhaenyra to make a move. That's what he means when he says the patient hunter gets the kill in the trailer. And Aemond has shown his capacity for patience amply by now. He spent a decade and a half grooming Daeron to see him as his father, while hating his real father, and he's even convinced the boy that Targaryen blood itself is the problem. His control of the new king claimant will make the Hightowers rule the kingdoms should Daeron actually take the throne. And say what you will of the guy, but Aemond has proven that he can play the Game of Thrones, and he plays it to win. But while he may be able to control what happens in the seat of House Footly, his control over what occurs in the capital could be less concrete, because will Daemon try to lure out the Gold Cloak killers? There's a shot in a preview that has fans abuzz already, where we see a person with Targaryen hair wearing a Gold Cloak uniform and being stalked by Aemond's heterochromia spy. Everyone believes this is Daemon, and to be honest, we do see where they're coming from. Luther Largent might have acted on his own when Rhaenyra set him loose upon the capital, but he was still Daemon's friend, and the Gold Cloak's high command had all been close to him. He will definitely want to avenge their lives, and using a scheme where he dresses up as a target is not something Daemon is averse to. He has assumed disguises many times on the show, whether it was negotiating Laenor and Carl Corey's quote-unquote freedom martyrdom or Prince Jaehaerys' unfortunate death, the real question is whether Daemon will succeed, because his plots always have a way of coming back to bite him. When he and Rhaenyra sent Laenor across the sea, they also took the blame for his death. Jaehaerys wasn't supposed to be blood and cheese's target, that was Aemond. So how will Daemon's disguise play out? Will it actually flush out the Hightower's saboteurs, or will it somehow leave Daemon weaker as well? And what if the person in that armor isn't Daemon at all? Because judging from the way they're walking, it feels like they've never worn armor before. It could be that Rhaenyra herself is being used as bait here, and that too could make sense considering she's becoming increasingly impatient and suspicious. She repeatedly tells her advisors that she cannot stand by and watch what's happening in episode 5 and the preview for episode 6 in so many ways, and we know she's the type to take initiative and risk. But it doesn't matter if it's Daemon or Rhaenyra who lures out the Hightower's reporters, because ultimately the plan itself is the prediction. As for who helps them set it up, Daemon and Rhaenyra have access to the most well-known spy master in the capital, and Mysaria's spy network is still clearly operational. She'll provide the names, the means, and the plans, and it will be up to the crown to execute it. Daemon is the more likely candidate when compared to Rhaenyra, but speaking of Mysaria, there's another interesting thing that happens in the episode 6 preview, and that is directly connected to a new alliance formed in episode 5. Did Mysaria save Alicent and Helaena, the new alliance in the Red Keep? Episode 5 took a massive step in the direction of chaos because it has introduced a new relationship dynamic, a game of wits between Alicent Hightower and Mysaria. The White Worm comes in to check on Alicent after learning that Orwell has given her some sort of medication from her informers, and what unfolds is an interesting exchange where Alicent realizes that she actually has an upper hand when it comes to information. Mysaria started supporting Rhaenyra when Daemon wasn't with her. She's only seen the side of her that operates without his influence, and that's the person she wants to support. But Alicent rightly points out to her that Rhaenyra and Daemon are the same person, and that Mysaria is essentially supporting a time bomb regime. We know that Mysaria's been thinking the same thing based on her face during literally every small council meeting, and the fact that the small council being a chaotic boardroom is now a gag being played by Dan Fogler is just a cherry on top of the cake. Alicent telling her that by staying silent about the Moon Tea, she will gain a new ally in House Hightower is ultimately what spares her from being ratted out, because for the first time, Mysaria feels like she's got power over the Greens. It used to be the other way around, and she can just dangle Helena's pregnancy over Alicent's head should she refuse to cooperate. In fact, she foils 2 Alicent plans in episode 5, one with a Moon Tea and another an escape, because she's not stupid enough to let a potential claimant out of her sight, or its mother and grandmother. At the end of episode 5, Alicent and Helaena discover a secret passage in the room they're being held in and try to escape, but the path was blocked after Prince Jaehaerys' death. With a hidden door closing behind them and their light source running out, Alicent and Helaena are trapped. But in the preview for episode 6, we see Helaena sewing in what looks like her room. Clearly, they've been rescued. The question is, who rescued them? If it was Rhaenyra's guards, then they probably wouldn't be gentle with either queen, but we have a hunch that it's Mysaria's agents, and that this is just another step towards an internal alliance working against Rhaenyra. But Alicent needs to be careful as well. She can't forget that she's the one who burnt down all of Mysaria's life's work, and that the White Worm has a long memory. By being indebted to her, she might be setting herself up for great tragedy in the future. And speaking of tragedy, we didn't dedicate a separate section to this, but Rhaenyra's tyranny will only deepen in the coming episode, as it has been since the season began. She appears to be locking up her courtiers in the throne room in the preview, and her impatience is making her trademark impulsivity resurface hard. She sent Bela and Adam out to patrol again despite them being at their physical limits. She is fixated on getting revenge for her sons instead of victory for her cause, and Ormond's shadow war has made her paranoia public. Mysaria and Alicent's alliance is more logical than you think. Despite the obvious drawbacks, and Rhaenyra doing crazy stuff in every episode is no longer a prediction. Neither is Criston Cole's death, which is now sealed for episode 6, because the preview and episode 5 both made it clear that Butcher's Ball is near. Rhaenyra's tyranny and Cole's glorious death are predictions we've been talking about for many days, but the rest, not so much. That's why we want to know what you guys think will happen in episode 6. What do you think about our predictions, and do you have any of your own? Well, let us know in the comments down below. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more House of the Dragon content. We'll see you guys real soon with yet another video. This is the V of Marvelous Videos, and I'll be seeing you soon.